Hi, everyone. I'm Elaine Quijano. We begin with two investigations inside President Trump's Justice Department. The first is special counsel Robert Mueller's inquiry into President Trump, obstruction of justice, and possible collusion between his campaign and Russia. The second is the FBI probe into Mr. Trump's Supreme Court nominee, Brett Kavanaugh. President Trump would prefer that neither investigation exist. He said so himself, and he's used similar language when discussing them.
This is a witch hunt.
I call it the witch hunt.
This is a witch hunt, and it's a disgrace.
We don't want to go on to use an expression often used by me, we don't want to go on a witch hunt, do we?
The last clip there was the president on Monday in the White House Rose Garden. The event was billed as trade-related, but the topic quickly veered to Kavanaugh. And the investigation into his Supreme Court pick is getting underway just as the ongoing Russia investigation could see a major shift. Deputy Attorney General Rod Rosenstein, who oversees the Russia probe, is supposed to meet with the president in the coming days to discuss his fate. You'll recall the New York Times reported last month that Rosenstein offered to secretly record Mr. Trump and even raised the possibility of pushing to invoke the 25th Amendment. Rosenstein's exit, if it happens, could give the president and his allies more influence over the probe. That's one reason the president's critics are paying close attention to Mr. Trump's involvement in the newest investigation. And the question of the president's involvement has been a complicated one. On Sunday, the president said in a tweet that he wanted the FBI to interview, quote, whoever they deem appropriate at their discretion. But a number of reports, including this one from the Washington Post on Sunday, suggested the White House had put constraints on the investigation. On Monday, the president appeared to be open to a broader investigation. Here he is again in the Rose Garden.
Peter, I think the FBI should interview anybody that they want within reason. But you have to say within reason. They should interview, but they should also be guided, and I'm being guided, by what the senators are looking for, because they have to make the choice.
CBS News has confirmed that the White House authorized the FBI to expand its inquiry to include anyone the Bureau deems necessary. Investigators have until Friday. But the Mueller probe is a constant reminder to the White House that inquiries start in one place and sometimes end up somewhere else. And that's why these comments from Arizona GOP Senator Jeff Flake on 60 Minutes on Sunday may be crucial. Here's what Scott Pelley asked the senator.
If Judge Kavanaugh is shown to have lied to the committee, nomination's over?
Oh, yes. I would think so.
That was Senator Flake sitting with Delaware Democratic Senator Chris Coons in a clip you can expect to hear many times this week. President Trump got a similar question in the Rose Garden on Monday.
If he did lie about his drinking, does that mean you'll pull his...
I don't think he did.
Okay.
Look, here's what. I'm just saying, I'm not a drinker. I can honestly say I never had a beer in my life, okay?
Right.
It's one of my only good traits. I don't drink. Whenever they're looking for something good, I say, I never had a glass of alcohol. I've never had alcohol. I've just, for whatever reason. Can you imagine if I had? What a mess I'd be? I'd be the world's worst.
Joining me now from our D.C. bureau is Washington Post national political correspondent Dave Weigel. Dave is also the anchor of the new Washington Post campaign newsletter, The Trailer. And here with me on set is CBSN political reporter Caitlin Huey-Burns. Welcome to you both. Caitlin, let me start with you. We know that President Trump, of course, has a complex relationship, to put it mildly, with the Justice Department. His recurring grievance seems to be that he cannot control officials there. So I wonder if you could put this current investigation into context for us, knowing that that's sort of the backdrop.
It was really interesting when we were kind of wondering when the Judiciary Committee, which of course is run by Republicans, authorized this reopening of the background check by the FBI at the direction of Jeff Flake, who said that he wouldn't vote on Kavanaugh until that background check was completed in 1 week. It did raise a lot of questions about how both sides really would view the FBI and whatever it came up with. And remember, the FBI doesn't make a decision about Kavanaugh. It just will do the background investigation and present it back to the White House and to lawmakers. So you had Democrats who have been, over the past several months in the Trump administration, really sticking up for the FBI and wanting it to be, not criticized by the president, wondering about what a limited investigation could be and what this could actually bring forth. And then you've had some Republicans who have been very critical of the FBI now seemingly going to be okay with, assuming, which is an assumption, if they don't come up with anything on Kavanagh, agreeing to go forward. So the president is saying that he will let the FBI do whatever it needs to do and talk to whoever it needs to talk to. But Jeff Flake at the very beginning said he only wanted it to be 1 week. Republicans have narrowed it down to 1 week. And we even heard Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, saying today that the Senate will indeed vote this week on Kavanaugh.
Yeah, I mean, Dave, what are your thoughts on this? The context here, given the fact that we have heard the president describe how he is unhappy with his ability to sort of control Justice Department officials, that they don't necessarily do what he wants them to do.
Well, the electoral effect of this is all pretty mediocre for Republicans at best. It's only not a sure loser because of the map of the Senate races are being conducted on this year. There are a few, I'd say, as few as 3, maybe as many as 6 Democrats who had a tough decision to make whether to delay this vote. You saw Joe Donnelly in Indiana say that he didn't want any vote on this until an FBI investigation. You've seen polling that says for most of these Democrats that's not a problem. So politically, the Republicans are fairly isolated in a way that is not evident from the way Mitch McConnell or the president talks about it. I found this kind of out in the country over the weekend. I spent some time in Texas, and if you talk to rank and file Republicans, they are convinced that the country is with them, that people want this man confirmed, that they have no questions about him whatsoever. The FBI shouldn't be involved at all. I mean, I heard a lot of anger, really, from Republican voters that the FBI was brought into this case. Mm-hmm. And in that, I think they're reflecting the frustration of a president who considers the FBI a bad actor when it is going after him or anyone that he supports or has a political interest in.
Yeah, I want to ask you more about your reporting in just a moment, Dave. But, there is this confusion, perhaps even at the moment, about the scope of the Kavanaugh inquiry and who defines it. Dave, what are the outstanding questions that you have right now regarding that?
Well, it is murky. So it's really the New Yorker that first, through Ronan Farrow and Jane Mayer, that raised questions about whether the FBI was doing a quick runaround interview and was not going to be very thorough. And I remember, this was a problem Democrats encountered in 1991. Democratic staffers interviewed Anita Hill thoroughly, got anecdotes and details about her experience that were not received when the FBI went back and did the same interviews. The backlash that some Democrats, actually quite a few in the Senate, remember, was that Republicans were able to say there were discrepancies between what the FBI investigated and what Democrats found. Implication being Democrats were gilding the lily, were making stuff up. So there is a worry about this exact same thing happening through this investigation now. Not that Democrats regret that they got delayed, that they asked for it, but they might have set it up so that if this does not come out with a complete condemnation, something that makes Kavanaugh unconfirmable, Republicans will say not just that the nomination was justified, but that Democrats were lying the whole time, that he had any character issues whatsoever.
And Caitlin, what about you? What are sort of the outstanding questions right now as we think about the Kavanaugh inquiry, and who defines its parameters now?
Right. Well, the reason that Republicans didn't want to have the FBI go back in and do another background check was that they thought that the committee was perfectly capable of conducting the investigation. Democrats and Ford herself had called for an FBI background check again before Ford actually testified. And the argument was that the committee was not capable of conducting the investigation that they wanted to, and they wanted to have some kind of independent arbiter of all of this. So Dave's exactly right that, if the FBI comes back with nothing new here, that Republicans could point to it and say that, look, we went this additional step that we didn't even think was necessary, but we went there and it revealed nothing. Now, it is really important to note that the FBI will not make any decisions, and this is a background check investigation, not a criminal investigation. And so it's not quite clear that it will reveal anything new, but that's why Democrats wanted the Bureau to look at lots of different people involved. There were lots of names mentioned by both Ford and by Kavanaugh, lots of different people being reported out. They want the FBI to talk to everybody and kind of get a fuller picture here.
Dave, we heard Senator Flake on 60 Minutes last night basically saying that Kavanaugh's nomination is over if the FBI finds that, in fact, Kavanaugh lied to Congress. Now, if you are Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell or Judiciary Chair Chuck Grassley, how do you receive that answer? What are you thinking?
Well, if you look at Flake's record on a lot of these fights, he has resisted for a couple of days and then given it when he was satisfied. I don't think in his heart of hearts he wants to vote down Brett Kavanaugh. He wants to leave the Senate with this seat maybe remaining open through the lame duck through 2019. So the calculation about Flake you might see Republicans make is that he is going to be problematic in public, but not in a way that convinces any Republican voters, and not in a way that he's going to fulfill. They're pretty prepared, as we've been saying. If this comes out, even if they didn't interview Mark Judge, although we've heard maybe perhaps they did, even if they have not interviewed everyone Democrats want to get a full hearing from, the Republicans are pretty ready to say to people like Flake, to Murkowski, that we listened. There was not enough here to go on to destroy the nomination.
Oh, you're nodding your head, Caitlin. What are you thinking?
I think that's right. We're hearing from a lot of Republicans over the past week, but especially after Flake made this movement, there is a lot of momentum, at least among Republican voters, to confirm Kavanaugh. And there is a concern that Republicans running for re-election this year will face a backlash against members of their own party if they don't get him through. You're also hearing the president talk about this in strictly political terms at a rally over the weekend, and he's, of course, going to be on the road several times this week, including tonight in Tennessee, basically, calling on voters to push their lawmakers to confirm Kavanaugh, really defending Kavanaugh in political terms, and kind of painting the Democrats as the opposition to this particular Supreme Court justice. So he's trying to kind of rally the troops in a very political way for the midterm elections around Kavanaugh.
And so on that note, Dave, a moment ago, you were talking about your travels through the country to report on the midterms. What themes are you seeing in the way that these Kavanaugh accusations are reshaping campaigns?
I was trying to get at some of it before, that among Republican-based voters, the image of the FBI has been badly tarnished by the president. For Democrats, actually, it's been tarnished less, even though they would point to the FBI as the reason Hillary Clinton lost the presidency. Among Republicans, I was in Fredericksburg, Taylor, Texas over the weekend. And ask about Kavanaugh, what you hear is that the Republicans are being weak and they're being railroaded into something they shouldn't have to do in the first place. The FBI can't be trusted. That Donald Trump should be firing more FBI agents, should be cracking down on the organization. The idea with those voters is that if this president needs to take powers that, frankly, no president has taken since the World War I, to put rid of people in the civil service, then good, because anything less than that is putting a halt in his agenda. You hear that a lot. Among Democrats, you just hear, I think, a really emotional, visceral reaction to Ford's testimony and to this overall sense that women keep speaking out about these topics and getting ignored, getting minimized, getting left behind. It is leaving very vivid memories of the 2016 campaign, with the difference being a lot of people felt awkward defending Hillary Clinton from charges of discrimination or unfairness. They feel very comfortable defending all the women who've come forward in the last couple of years, many of whom are not being believed. So there's something kind of visceral, emotional, furious, I find, among Democrats and especially female Democrats. Among Republicans, I just find an intensification of this theme that the state in Washington, the one that Donald Trump inherited when he became president, is out to get him, and this is all part of that.
Well, Dave, the president's Kavanaugh comments on Monday were at an event that was supposed to be about heralding his new trade deal.
Yeah.
Is any of that part of the president's message making its way to midterm voters?
Well, if you're a farmer who deals in soybeans, the trade war already had its impact on you for this year. And so if you're in Minnesota, where the president's going to spend part of the week, actually he's going to go to part of the state that grows soybeans. It's very agricultural. I think his diehards are still happy. For a lot of people, this deal did not get that much for the United States, especially when it came to dairy. It was a very good deal for Canada, having held out that long. It renamed NAFTA, and I've found so far labor unions and Democrats are pretty comfortable saying this was more of a long-term branding opportunity than something turning around. I mean, what people want to see, what they saw a little bit of after steel tariffs, were actual new hires in manufacturing, were industries that were thinking of outsourcing, not outsourcing. I don't think you're going to see an immediate impact of that, certainly the next month, certainly because this might not be approved by Congress, definitely not before the midterm elections. So the effect might be kind of minimal. I always kind of wince when we're trying to hear the actual policy of the administration and it gets sideswiped by events. But in this case, the policy might not have much of an impact.
Yeah, Caitlin, what do you think about that? I mean, obviously the president was out trying to tout this today, but as Dave points out, I mean, it may not actually be really anything there.
Right, and he was trying to tout it, but he also kind of noted, jokingly, but perhaps not, that trade kind of bores people. And so he was eager then to kind of take those questions eventually about Kavanaugh. We've seen him do this with the tax bill as well. He'll go to places where he is slated to talk about the tax reform bill and just ends up talking about the news of the day or a kind of a touchstone issue that he thinks could really kind of rev people up. And I think we'll see this again as long as Kavanaugh remains in limbo this week. If in fact he does, the president will talk about that because that might interest folks. I think with trade too, the timing, while the details are there's still lots of questions about the actual practical implication of this and what this actually would do. I think the timing is such that they want this to be kind of a way to calm some nerves heading into the midterm elections, especially in states where Republicans are trying to either hold on to seats or take over from Democrats, and states, of course, where trade issues are going to be kind of front and center for voters. But also it's an issue, of course, that scrambles alliances. So as Dave mentioned, you'll have some Democrats pretty responsive to this, and other Republicans, especially in Texas, for example, not as keen to big changes if in fact they're coming.
Yeah, Dave, and trade is such a complex and nuanced issue. What do voters look for in terms of a promise kept from the president on this issue?
Well, the new rules require more parts. Let's start with cars, I guess, because cars are a pretty big part of what people blame NAFTA for taking from the United States. The cars sold in North America have to use more North American parts than they did before this revision of the deal. That's actually going to lead probably to higher prices for cars. It will lead, I think, on the margins to some more jobs in the industry, but not necessarily in the United States. I mean, I think it's going to be pretty marginal. I mean, the dream that Donald Trump would talk about in 2016 was literally trade negotiations so aggressive that companies that had outsourced, that had sent factories to Monterrey or to Guadalajara were going to come back to the United States. And because that hasn't happened that much, the president will pretend that it is. So I think we're going to see him continue to pretend more than the facts allow that there is a surge back of manufacturing jobs to the United States. And I really, again, I'm going back to Minnesota. I want to see how he discusses that. I'm not sure how much he appreciates how unpopular the tariffs have been in the part of Minnesota he's going to, in Rochester.
Yeah, I mean, I think the question will boil down to, will the president be the one that voters blame, right? Because we've seen time and time again that even if a fact is true, it's not necessarily the president that gets assigned the blame. Sometimes it's members of Congress or people who are in no way, shape, or form responsible. All right, Caitlin Huey-Burns, thank you so much. Dave Weigel, stick around. We're going to talk to you in the next break.